Welcome to Parenting Differently, where we leave behind the old way of parenting and allow the gifts of parenthood to raise us. Different to perhaps how we expected to be raising our kids, maybe different to how we were raised, maybe different to how society is telling us to raise our kids, just different. I'm your host, Anja Simmons. I'm a mum of two big people, a trained yoga teacher, parenting coach, author. My book, Parent from This Place, How Yoga Changed the Way I Parent, out right now. And I came into parenting as a trained British nanny and just assumed it was going to be easy, or just, I've done it before. This should be a cinch. And I realized quite quickly that that wasn't the case, and actually that we were being raised together, that they were holding me up to my highest being when I was open to learn all the gifts they brought to the table. And I really have this passion and want to share other parents, other mums and dads who are choosing to do it differently, who are taking the leap to not do it just the same way, who are questioning things and getting conscious. So my guest today is Kelly Irene. She runs her own podcast, Most True You, and I was fortunate enough to be a guest on there recently. And we had such a great conversation. I was like, you got to come over to my side. You got to come over and share your parenting journey, which really sparked a lot of conversation between us. So I look forward to introducing you to Kelly Irene. So welcome, Kelly, to Parenting Differently.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and talking with you.
Wonderful. So tell us, I said a little bit before in my intro just about how we met and that I was on your podcast and we just had such a great conversation. And let's dive a little more into, who are you? What does that mean to you? And who are you parenting?
Gosh, I'm usually the one asking that question of who are you? And so I should really have a great answer for that. I'm finding that it's a very difficult question when you're the one answering it. So I'm a parent. I struggle with this question because I'm like, what is my identity? And so yeah, I struggle with that. But who I am, I'm a parent. I have two girls that are 10 and 12. And I also am an HR professional. That's something that I do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also very closely connected with who I am because I am someone who is very empathetic. I can typically see people's needs, and I want to help them meet their own needs. I'm not the person who wants to do that for them, but I want to empower others. So I'm an empowerer, I'm an encourager. I am really love people to find their truth. And so that's when I think about who I am, that's what I think is not just who I am for my kids or professionally, but who am I at my deepest level? And that's me, is the person who wants to lead others to empower themselves.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that change in there because we can get so attached to labels and I'm this,
Yeah.
I'm this, I qualified this, I have this, I got
Yeah.
a lot, right? And it's kind of a beautiful place to start when we realize we're more than that. Right?
Yeah.
That's what we bring to the table in our parenting. That's what we bring, it's uncovering those pieces. So, and I think I love what you said too about you're always uncovering that because it is a constant journey. I mean, it has
It
been for
really
me. It's
is.
not, even how I was yesterday, I'm probably different today.
Yeah,
Like
it's
10 years
true.
ago, right? It's just
Yeah.
different.
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny because I'm the host of a podcast called Most True You. And yet it really is that, like, who are you today? Who are you in this moment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So, what are you uncovering most about yourself in your parenting from with your two girls?
Yeah. What I'm uncovering about myself right now is that my intuition is my superpower. And that is really going into my parenting where I'm really tapping into what do I intuitively know about myself and my kids, but then also what do they know? So I had this really difficult conversation with my 12-year-old. We were laying in bed and was like 9:30 at night. I'm exhausted. I'm done for the day. But she's like, let's chat. And she's telling me what a terrible mom I am because I don't make her clean her room. I don't teach her how to cook. I'm not giving her life skills that she's going to need as a grown up. And I'm like, where
Bless
is
you.
this coming from? I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, I didn't say that to her, but it really was hard for me because I'm thinking like those aren't things that I'm necessarily good at. Like I'm not the most tidy person
Hmm.
and I'm not the most consistent person. So for me to be the one in charge of her cleaning her room every day is not going to happen. And so I had to really tap into my own intuition of like, okay, what is it that she's telling me that she needs, which is consistency and boundaries?
Hmm.
But what is it that I also need? And that is to not be the one in charge of her cleaning her room. And so the next day I said, all right, I've thought about this. I get where you're coming from. You need my help and I'm willing to help you, but we have to be partners in this. So I'll tell you once a day to clean your room, but you have to make the decision of whether you want to clean it or not. And she was like, well, no, you have to make me. And I said, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm not going to make you do it because ultimately it really is your decision. And but it was so empowering to me to be able to say, okay, I know myself well enough to know I'm going to fail every time if I have to be in charge of her cleaning her room every single day because my room doesn't get cleaned every single day.
Well,
Um, but that's fairly new for me. Like that's not something that I've
yeah.
always been able to tap into.
That's amazing. That whole conversation is amazing, and it makes me chuckle because our kids definitely not just challenge us, but they see a side of us that really makes us go, "Oh gosh!"
Yeah.
And you could have gone to the place of, "Oh my God, I'm an awful parent." Imagine I'm not telling her to clean a room. I'm not making her, teaching her to cook, and to tap into yourself to be like, "That's actually not what my best, but I'm teaching you so many other things, and it's actually
Yeah.
okay at the age that she's at, right? That can be her. She's got to take ownership, like you say. I
Yes.
love it that as a team,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it becomes. I love that. I so love that because I used to fight all the time with my inner self about not being strict enough
Hmm.
and and not being great. I'd set a routine and I'd fail. I would fail even before I'd got
Yeah.
downstairs. Before not them, And I said every morning we're going to do this and we're going to be on time for school and
Yeah.
it was just an internal struggle, right? So I love this
Yep.
lesson that in learning to check in and be like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do that for you, but this is what I can do. And what a life skill to give people the voice that, I hear what you're needing, but for me, you know, uh, it's not going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Right?
And that comes from having many days of that same struggle of like the internal struggle of why can't I do this? Why am I not doing a good enough job? And finally realizing like that's just not how I am. And while yes, I do want to be better at keeping the house clean, I also can't be in charge of three of us
Right.
doing that. I'm
Yeah.
barely able to do it myself.
I hear you. And you know what? It's so interesting. So my kids are 20 and 23,
Hmm.
and there's a bunch of stuff going on, excuse me, in one of their lives. And earlier today, I was talking to my sister, and it was a realization, and I've had it a few times, right? Keeps up a few times throughout. So even when they were younger, excuse me. And it was this that, you know what? I, I got to let the chips fall where they fall. It is
Mm.
not mine. I just cannot carry this. I need to fix everybody. I need to help everybody. I'm going to worry about your future and your ways.
Yeah.
That's your job. That's really yours. Like I can be the comfortable place to land. I can offer advice if it's asked for or not asked for some days, but just I realize that felt, and I felt it even at the beginning when having children, was the in naming them. That felt like such a responsibility to
Mm.
create a name for this
Yeah.
individual for their rest of
Gosh.
their
Yeah.
life. I mean, I
Yeah.
assumed, you know. Um, I found that stuff hard, and I thought it was because there was something wrong with me. So it's so
Mm.
beautiful when I hear, with your guys being younger, that you're already in that place of, hey, like that intuition. Like, oof, why is that not
Yeah.
taught in schools? Why is that not just a
Right.
real, like you say, it's a power. It's
Yeah.
so powerful. It will
So
never lead
powerful.
you wrong. Like, wow,
Yep.
you don't need a
Yep.
mama if your intuition never leads you wrong. You don't have to keep asking mum, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Such a good
Oh,
point.
good. Okay. And so from your childhood
Hmm.
to your children, what do you think you're doing differently?
Everything. So my parents were fantastic in a lot of ways, but they didn't spend a lot of time with us. And we were very much, and I think this is the case for a lot of people, right? Like you have breakfast and then you're out the door until it's lunchtime, and then you're out the door again until it's dinner time.
Hmm.
And we were very much, we were given a lot of opportunity to play outside, which was great. Like I loved it as a kid. But at the same time, I never had that example of the parent child interaction that I wanted to give my girls. So I am certainly not their entertainer. They know that. Like if they come to me and they're bickering or they're bored or whatever, I'm like, you guys, I'm working or I'm making dinner, or hey, I'd love to play a game with you, but that's going to have to be at this time. And, things like that. So like, I'm not their entertainer, but at the same time, I want to play games with them. I want to read them books. I want to hang out with them every day and make sure that we do have some point in the day where we can connect.
Mm.
And that's the piece that I would say was missing from my childhood, was that like daily consistent connection.
Right.
If my dad, I spent a ton of time with as a child, but it was always doing the like his thing. So he was a roofing contractor. He loved to fish. He loved to hunt. So like I would go do that stuff with him. I'd literally go up on the roofs with him. I would go fishing with him. In fact, this morning I was walking the dog and it was still dark out and I could see Orion's belt in the sky. And it kind of hit me like, how cool is that? That's something that I remember seeing, from the time that I was 6 or 7, being out on the boat with my dad in those early morning hours
Mm.
and him telling me the stories of the stars. So like we did have those connecting points, but it was always doing his things. And
Mm.
so for me, I really wanted to be able to connect with, and this came for me later on in parenting too. This was not early on, but
Right.
where I'm at now is I want to have those daily connections with my kids in a way that matters to them. And it does not come naturally. It does not come easily, but it's something that I'm very committed to. So I think that for me is like the biggest
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's you being consistent, right?
There, you're right. Thank you
Right.
for
And the
pointing that
power
out.
in the things that are
Yeah.
really important for you
Yeah.
and for them. But I love the piece you said. I like to want to spend time with them doing something that they really like. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the happy medium. Like sometimes it's all about the parent and you just fit
Yeah.
in and follow on. And then sometimes it's the other way, all about the kid and nothing to do, you
Yeah.
use yourself and you're like, hey, I have an opinion here, right? Or
Yeah.
I would like to do something different. Um, so I really like that piece that there's that connection. And it is, and I think people get mistaken, and I did, even coming as a trained British nanny into parenting, thinking, okay, I had all the structure part down because I
Mm,
learned that. That was in me. But the real, what became important was that real connection. I see you, I hear you.
mm,
And they
yeah.
don't need that all the time. That's not a reality. And we often feel
Yeah.
bad because we're like, oh God, it was only 2 minutes. But man, if it's 2 minutes full on
Yeah.
in your space, listening and hearing, that's life altering. They're not seeking that
Yep.
elsewhere. Show me I'm worth it. Show me I'm of value,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 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 And that's been really powerful for my kids. And especially now with my oldest, because she's a tween,
Mhm.
100%. And she's really into dance and she loves to watch YouTube videos with like K-pop dancers
Yeah.
and learn these. And because I've been really intentional about paying attention to the things that she likes, I've found these really cool connection points with her where like I can just sit and watch her dance for 10 minutes and she's totally happy with that. Like it doesn't have to be something super involved.
Hmm.
But we actually went to an anime convention like 2 months ago for her birthday. And we're watching all these people do these K-pop dances. And she leans over and she was like, this is better than Disneyland. Like she just loved it so much. And it was so filling for her. And it really, I mean, that was one of those moments where I kind of patted myself on the back and I was
Hell
like, this
yeah,
is a major
yeah.
mom win because I found this, I just paid attention to what she likes.
Yeah.
And that is what I feel like was missing from my own childhood. Was we were totally encouraged to do the things that we like,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no parental involvement with those.
Right.
And it's so empowering to me, and I think for my kids, to be able to pay attention to the things that matter to them. And then they see that as like, wow, I matter.
Yeah, yeah, she really
Yeah.
sees me because I mean, like I love it, mum win, because there's so many times we miss the mark, right? There's so many
Oh, yeah.
times that we're like, oh, if only, or I should have, or I bought the
Yep.
wrong this, or whatever it is that you're tempting to be. So when you do hit it, yeah, it's a big pat on the back, and it's also received as in her way of saying, wow, okay, because she
Mhm.
probably knew that wasn't your most favorite day. That wasn't something, I mean, for what you want to see or do, or perhaps you're really into it,
I loved it.
but yeah, but you sort of
Yeah.
found it and did it for her. I love that.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
do. That is cool. So in your learning and unlearning from when they were little
Hmm.
to now, what how do you think you've managed to, or managing to, not put your stuff on them? Do you know what that means, right?
Oh gosh. I don't know if I am managing that very well. That's a great question. So to back up a little bit, you started that question with talking about the unlearning. And for me, what I had to unlearn is when I became a parent, when I was pregnant with my first child, I realized I have no idea what I'm doing, because the example that I had, I know isn't what I want to do, but I don't know what to do. And at that time, I was in a very conservative religious context. And so the
Okay.
information that I was getting was coming from that place of, there was a book that everybody raved about that, was like, let the kids cry it out. Once they're like a month old, they're too old to be manipulating you, things like that. Like those, that was the kind of language in the book, but that was all that I had. And so I was reading that and trying to figure out, how do I get my newborn on a sleep schedule? How do I make sure that she's on my schedule, that my life isn't revolving around her? And it felt really crummy because I was not listening to my intuition, which was saying, this is shit. You should not be treating your baby like this. Instead, I was listening to the voices that I had always listened to, which were those within the religious context. And so I have a lot of regret about that. I feel like that caused a lot of damage to my baby. And
Mm.
now she's 12. That attachment didn't happen the way that now I know it could have happened. And so
Mm.
there's a lot of like pain and sadness and grief that I've had to process through that. But I think sometimes I still err on the side of like, too nice now, because I don't want to go to that like too structured, um, too mean, too punitive, too consequential. I really want to be more like a coach or a teacher to my kids versus like the one always shaking my finger at them.
Right.
But I know for my older daughter, that's really hard because she needs a lot of structure, and my younger daughter doesn't. And so in my older daughter's eyes, the younger one gets away with a lot, because I just don't care, honestly. Like my kids can cuss. I don't care. They know that they can't, like, if you do it at school and you get in trouble, like you're going to have your consequences, because that's just not appropriate. But
Right.
like if you're home and you stub your toe and you say damn it or something like that, I don't care. Like that's pretty appropriate. And sometimes you need those words. But for my older daughter, that's really hard, because she's like, no, that has to always be wrong. How can it sometimes be okay and sometimes not be okay?
Right.
And so there's things like that that are hard for me, because I think that like I still put some of that shame into the decisions that I make, the shame that I feel about having not parented well, not created those attachments with them when they were babies. I think sometimes that still infiltrates some of what I'm doing now.
Right.
um and there's probably other things too, but that's the one that stands out the most, of like, that's probably still there. But then I also am really aware of me having stepped into my intuition as my superpower. Um I put that onto them. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So I don't think it's always a negative thing, right? Like I am teaching them now, what does your body feel with this? What is your, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like just paying attention to their own knowing so that they can make decisions based off of that. And then if somebody doesn't like that, just like helping them learn that like that's okay. That person doesn't have to like it. You don't get to choose that, but like you did the right thing for you and you didn't harm them. They just don't like it. So
Right.
there's things like that that I'm, the things that I'm unlearning that I'm still putting onto them and shouldn't be, but then the things that I'm learning that I am putting onto them or teaching them that I think are going to serve them really well.
Yeah, yeah, and it is. I think the healing, it comes from the moment you thought that didn't feel good, and
Yeah.
being compassionate and kind to yourself because that's all you knew at the time,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I
Yeah,
feel the same
absolutely.
when people, a lot of people, are not so keen to talk about their childhood on this particular
Mm,
forum because they're worried about upsetting, and I get that. But when
yeah.
you come from a place of, when it's not a blame, I'm
Oh
assuming our
no.
parents did the best they could with what they knew,
Yeah.
right? Generally, that's what people come to
Yep.
parenting, with what they know, right? And at
Yeah.
each stage as your children, you see yourself there, and that's the healing, right? And then
Yeah.
and that keeps unwinding and growing. And yeah, I have regrets too of things that I thought, wow, my goodness, I thought I even knew better and I still didn't do it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and not just from the nanny, just from I was always into learning about myself and curious
Yeah.
about different things. But man, you face me with anger. Oh, I kind of get really angry too, right? Even though my conscious mind says, hey, this is just a child. He's allowed to express his
Right.
anger. Right? I have to go there to its steps. It doesn't just come naturally. So like, it is
Yeah.
that changing, knowing we need to change it for them to move forward, right? For
Yeah.
them to be more whole and healthy, but ultimately for us too. And another part I love that you spoke of really is also, um, if we look at the future goal of what we want with our children, right? The
Hmm.
future of, I would like that they would like me in their life, right? Because we all know as adults,
Yeah.
the choice is there. Even as teens, the
Yeah.
choice is there,
Yeah.
right? And I would like to be a welcome part in your life, not a burden. I would like to be able that you would think, hey, I want to talk to mom, you know,
Yeah.
and those kind of things. And that's through just really being in the trenches and working through our stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really sorry, being able to apologize. This is what I knew, but this is what I'm trying. And they see that. That's the growth. There's
Yeah.
no perfection. Oh my God, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a difficult thing to give yourself that compassion. And yet, one thing that has actually helped me is to see how I've been able to give that to my own mom,
Mm.
who, when I really look at her and how she was as a parent when I was a child, I am blown away by the generational trauma that she broke as my mother. I
Mm.
mean, when as an adult now, I hear these stories about her childhood and her parents' childhood, my grandparents, and as I'm hearing those and I'm thinking, wow, you broke that.
Yeah.
Like, are there things that I want to do differently? Absolutely. But you broke that and you did such a great job with that. And then I hear that and I'm like, oh, yeah, I can say that to myself too. And
Yeah.
we're each generation doing better, and it's just going to keep growing. And I know my kids are going to do better as well. And to me, I'm just like, that blows my mind to think about it that way.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I agree. Me too. Me too. And the
Yeah.
idea that, um, you know, if I know you have the spiritual side in there too, but the
Mhm.
idea that this is their life, the eagle eye view looking down is these are
Yeah.
they if they chose us, if they chose to come through
Yeah.
us, if they're leading their path,
Yeah.
that these are lessons for them, right, along the way that
Yeah.
I didn't know, I don't know everything, and I think
Yeah.
the quicker we dispel that myth when they're little, because
Yes.
I grew up really just thinking, wow, these people are just amazing. They know everything, and then you
Yeah.
realize like, hey, she said that, but she did that, or he said,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
it is the process of, yeah, intergenerationally, absolutely. Like when you think
Yeah.
how it all passes down, we want
Yeah.
to get rid of as much as we can and pass on better maybe it's not even better stuff, but better ways that they can be equipped to handle, the
Yeah.
next bit.
Yeah. Give them more tools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, powerful stuff. So, what do you think for you, although we sort of touched on it, but would be the hardest part, has been really the hardest part of being a parent and parenting?
All of it. All of it. So hard.
Day one till year 12.
Um, yeah, no, but I've loved it. I mean, it is the biggest challenge of my life because it doesn't stop, right? Each age, it's the challenge changes. So when they're 1 or 2 or 3, those ages have their own challenges. And then as they get into early elementary, it changes. And then later elementary, it changes. And I know it's going to shift again with middle school. Like each stage of their lives has a different challenge. And so as the parent, and that I don't know that I could have ever grasped this before becoming a parent, but I mean, you basically are signing up for a lifelong challenge. It's never going to end. I mean, I think with my mom dealing with me and my 2 sisters, even as, I'm going to be 40 next year. And I think like she still has challenges with us. It
Right.
doesn't end.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it has like prior to now, the biggest challenge was learning to trust myself in my parenting.
Mm.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it is true. I don't think. Okay, so we have a dog, right? Not comparing children to dogs. We have a dog, and he right now is 14 years old, right? So he's
Okay.
old. He's kind of and he's
Yeah.
grumpy. And I know even just from having him as a puppy, you're just loving the puppy, and then the
Yeah.
puppy, and then and then you're like, my God, he's still here. He still needs care. So, and that's a dog. So yeah,
Yeah.
23 years in on a child thing
Oh
for me.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, of it, I wouldn't have it any other way. Same for you, right? Wouldn't have it
Yeah.
any
Oh,
other way. But
absolutely not.
there,
Yeah.
there are such trying parts on every part of me
Yeah.
to, for me, never mind for them, for
Yeah.
me to keep
Yeah.
going, to keep learning,
Yep.
to being kind to myself, to move forward. So,
Yes.
yeah, it is never ending, and at times it is so overwhelming, and
Oh
I can get
yeah.
hung up on the
Yeah.
details of, oh, I gave them a snack, but they're going to be hungry, and then like when they like things that you go, my God, the amount of energy my head has had about food is, for
Right.
God's sake, open the cupboard. Here we go. know.
Yes, that's so funny. That was one of those things that early on I kind of gave myself permission to do that was not, part of the parenting protocol that I knew, but I didn't even think about it till you just said it and it sparked something that um, I feel like one of the first times of really listening to myself was when I created the snack cupboard. And I was so tired of having to be in charge of every stinking thing that they ate that finally I was like, if you're hungry, go to the cupboard, choose something. And, at that time they were so little. So I made sure that it was all healthy options
Right.
or, mostly healthy. But it was really freeing to just be like, no, I don't have to choose your snack right now. You go choose it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God,
Yeah.
yeah. It's so true. And I always love too because I was so caught up on homemade everything and I put this
Yeah.
pressure on myself and we made and blah,
Yep.
blah, 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 for years. And you know
Same.
what? The minute they had money, they're in the shit stuff. I never had
Yep.
pop in the house. There's pop in the house. Now it's beer. Now it's like different things, right? And lives off the most.
Yep.
I love pizza, but the shittiest of pizza that's out there is that his
Oh
food,
yeah.
and all those
Same.
things. And I think, my God, why didn't I just ease up a little bit? Because it's coming in
Yeah.
anyway.
Yep.
Now you say, oh, well, it's
Yeah.
on them. But no, I'm still around it going, did you have an apple? Have you had any fruit today? Like, give it up.
Yep.
This is
I totally
fantastic. So
understand.
the final question
Okay.
would be for if you think back to you as a new time mum, first time you held your
Mhm.
little girl in your arms,
Yeah.
and picture that feeling. What wisdom do you know of now that you could pass
Mm.
on to Kelly?
I would say listen to yourself. You know exactly what you need. You don't need the books. You don't need the other people. You already have everything that this baby needs.
Whew,
That's
I
what I would
just
say.
got
And then I'm going to
chills.
cry. Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
100%. If I could go back, that's what I would say. You have everything you already have everything you need. You're enough.
That
Yeah.
is powerful, Kelly. That is really, really powerful.
My younger self really needed that apparently.
I got goosebumps. It was like,
Aw.
yeah, wow. Imagine starting out as a parent, really
Yeah.
feeling that,
Yeah.
right? That is, that's powerful. So thank you so much, Kelly, for being here. I
Gosh.
really appreciate you
Thank
showing
you,
up and
Anja.
continuing sort of the conversation we were having over on your
Yeah.
podcast, a little differently
Yeah.
to parent guided, but I really, really appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here. And for
Thank
all the
you.
listeners and viewers, please subscribe, and you will see all of Kelly's information below of how you can reach out to her, how you can go listen to her podcast, which is phenomenal. And I'm so happy you were here.
Thank you so much for having me and for the great questions. I love this.
You're very welcome.